Stay tuned for urban legends to ghostly tales of the paranormal, because now it's time for
Message on the Wall.
This is Message on the Wall and the Curse of Tutankhamun. The Great Pyramids of Egypt have long held a fascination for archaeologists, with that dream of a great find revealing the burial place of some ancient ruler, just waiting in the desert to be uncovered. One of the most famous is Tutankhamun, who draws thousands of visitors to Egypt each year. He was a minor pharaoh, being a king of the Egyptian 18th dynasty. It was a short reign of 9 years, being no more than a boy of 18 or 19 when he died, leaving no heir. Tutankhamun's father, Akhenaten, was a much earlier version of England's Henry VIII in making laws to change the religion of the country and forbidding the worship of many gods in favour of one, Aten, the sun god, and so shifting the power from the priests to local government. During Tutankhamun's reign, most of his father's laws were reversed by those in power behind the throne, in trying to alleviate the chaos caused, and of course to hope the gods would look kindly upon Egypt. On Tutankhamun's death, his priest and advisor, Hai, became king, forcing Tutankhamun's widow to marry him to strengthen his claim to the throne. It was not long after this that she disappeared from historical records and had presumably died also at a young age. I was not a young man and died after only 4 years, leaving Tutankhamun's commander of the army, Horemheb, to succeed him. It was Horemheb that had the names of Tutankhamun, his father, and I's names removed and images desecrated. Over time, Tutankhamun was all but forgot. The tombs in the Valley of the Kings had all been opened to find they had long been plundered. No one searched for Tutankhamun, as they wouldn't look for something they didn't know existed. It was an Englishman, Howard Carter, that came across a number of references to the name. With very little evidence, Carter began his search for the lost king, but then came the Great War, World War I, that altered any progress. But Carter was sure he would find what he was looking for in the Valley of the Kings. Carter approached the 5th Lord Carnarvon, George Edward Stanhope Molyneux Herbert, who had taken up archaeology as a hobby. Feeding Carnarvon's imagination with finding the boy king's tomb, he sponsored expeditions for the next 5 years with no results. But Carter talked him into one last attempt, and it was this final expedition that paid off, making certain that Carter and Carnarvon would go down in history, and that Tutankhamun, who, having little influence during his reign, became the most famous Egyptian king in the world. Though the outer chamber to the tomb looked to have been broken into at least twice within months of Tutankhamun's burial, from then on, for over 3,000 years, he had been left in peace. Most of the treasure remained, showing for the first time the way pharaohs were prepared for the life beyond, with clothes, toys from childhood to fragile ornaments, food, furniture, and even several chariots. This all had to be catalogued before being removed. And of course there was the curse of the pharaohs. It was, and I suppose still is, a belief that anyone disturbing an ancient Egyptian mummy would suffer the consequences. And even more so in the case of the pharaohs, who were thought of as gods. And of course Tutankhamun was no exception, though Carter denied that any seal or tablet depicting a curse existed. But it wasn't long before questions were raised concerning a curse, and with newspapers fueling the excitement. It said the curse struck the day the tomb of Tutankhamun was broken into. Having found the steps leading down into the antechamber, everything was put on hold for 3 weeks, awaiting the arrival of Lord Carnarvon. When Carter was breaking open the tomb, it's claimed that Egyptologist James Henry Breasted was at Carter's house, and when he heard what sounded like a faint human cry. Having a canary in a cage, he saw that a cobra had got in and already had the bird in its mouth, though the story that was reported in the New York Times cannot be confirmed. The cobra was a symbol worn by Tutankhamun to strike at his enemies. The first death occurring that is attributed to the curse was that of Lord Carnarvon. Never getting to see the actual mummy, he died on April the 5th, 1923, almost 5 months after the tomb was opened. Shaving over a mosquito bite, it became infected, possibly with spores from the tomb. In turn, blood poisoning set in, which led to pneumonia. Carnarvon died at the Continental Savoy Hotel in Cairo, while at that same moment all the lights went out for 5 minutes, though power cuts were and still are a regular thing, and may or may not have had anything to do with the curse of the pharaohs. It was also said that at the same time Carnarvon's favourite dog Susie gave a long howl and died, but with the time difference, as Susie was in England, this was found to be 4 hours after her master passed away. His widow, whose wealth it was that Carnarvon had poured into the expedition, continued to finance Carter, and is said to have also come under the curse, having filed for bankruptcy in 1951. She died in poor circumstances at the age of 92, having choked on a piece of chicken. Apart from Carnarvon and his wife, 2 half-brothers are also said to have been struck down by the curse. In September of the same year, Colonel Aubrey Herbert, at the age of 43, had gone completely blind. Taking advice that if he had his teeth removed it would restore his sight, the operation went badly wrong, and like Lord Carnarvon, contracted blood poisoning. He was followed 6 years later, in 1929, by his brother Mervyn Herbert, who is reported to have died from malarial pneumonia. There were many others who died that are included in the curse just for having visited the tomb, but Howard Carter didn't believe in curses and continued his work, making discoveries in the tomb 10 years after its first opening. He made a round of lectures, becoming an agent for private collectors and museums. He died of lymphoma, a type of blood cancer, at the age of 64, 17 years after his discovery, though is still said to have come under the curse of the pharaohs. But the one who seems to be the most cursed is Tutankhamun himself. The family of the 18th dynasty virulently conducted incestuous relations that brought out genetic illnesses and deformities. It was noticed most recently that Tutankhamun had a clubbed foot that would account for walking sticks among the treasures. He also had a curved spine. With more access being granted, DNA was taken from several mummies, some that were unidentified, but with these DNA tests it was found that Tutankhamun's parents were brother and sister, and that he also took a wife who was his half-sister. Several strains of malaria were also found that would have weakened the young king's immune system, and with there being many theories as to how Tutankhamun died, it could be possible that it was due to one terrible bite from a mosquito. You've been listening to Message on the Wall, brought to you by Paranormal X, your website for everything paranormal at www.paranormalx.yolasite.com.